Municipal Clerk. Good. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. And I would look to administration to see who's doing the land acknowledgement. Mr. Mackay.
Thanks, Mayor Krauser. As you know, we're approaching the winter solstice and are really in the darkest days of the year right now. I don't know about for you, but for me, it's a time not only for reflection, but it also marks the start of a new beginning. And I find myself looking forward to the brighter days ahead. Whatever this time of year might mean for you, I do want to wish you a Dinash Aragabi Tijan. A Happy New Year in Stoney. And in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we acknowledge that we're gathered on Treaty 7 territory today. The traditional territory of the Stoney Dakota, comprised of the Bearspaw First Nation, Chiniki First Nation, and Goodstoney First Nation, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai. We acknowledge that this land is also home to the Rocky View Métis District 4 within the Battle River Territory. And we acknowledge that all nations who live, work, and play and help us steward this land and honor and celebrate this territory, and that we're committed to working to live in right relations and to advance truth and reconciliation.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mackay. Now we will turn to the agenda. Any changes? I will move then approval of the agenda for December 17th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now we have our delegations. First of all, we have ATCO. And Dr. Cottle, you're going to make some introductions.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Krauser. So a few months ago, the mayor and I were invited to lunch with some reps from ATCO, and they talked about coming or asked about coming to council to give this presentation, which we thought was a great idea. So I'm pleased to introduce Shane Ellis and Chris Topp from ATCO, who will give this presentation. Over to you.
Welcome to the Community of the Whole, and good to see you again.
Yes, thanks for having us. We love talking about energy and are passionate about it, so I will try to stick with time. I have practiced it, so I am close. I wanted to maybe briefly, we'll go to the next slide. Do I have control? I have control, awesome. Okay, just briefly, I know we probably all know who ATCO is as far as Alberta goes, but I did just want to point out that we are worldwide. We have operations in over 100 countries and have been around for over 75 years. And we have, so my name is Shane Ellis. I'm Vice President of Operations for Gas and Pipelines. We also have an electric utility in Alberta. We have a gas utility in Australia. We have electric hydro assets in Mexico, a port business, and many other water business here in Alberta. Why that's important, I think, when we talk about energy, we're trying to talk about it holistically. Yes, my background is gas and pipelines, and we work closely with our electric peers as well, all over the world. So who I am, ATCO Gas, I think we're quite familiar with that company, and so I won't talk a lot about it, but we do serve majority of Albertans, 1.3 million customers, about 80% of the province, and have been doing that for over 100 years, safe and reliably. I want to center the presentation or the conversation around these three topics. We used to talk about energy delivery in three topics around reliable, affordable, and safe. You know, safe is kind of table stakes now. It's expected. It's still super important, but it needs to be there. And we've shifted to the trilemony. We talk about reliable, we talk about affordable, and we talk about clean. And when we're talking about clean, we're talking about carbon footprint, carbon emissions. And those, we need to frame our conversations in those three categories. Carbon emissions are more important than ever for us to talk about, but we can't forget about a reliable and affordable at the same time. Perfect example, you know, we live in a cold weather climate, and when it is cold, we want to make sure that energy is there, both electricity and for most of us, our heating. And we don't go far today without talking about some of the affordability challenges we're facing as a nation right now. And so we have to frame our conversation in all three. I thought one of the best ways to have that conversation is to look at that cold snap we had last year and some of the things we learned about our energy systems during that cold snap. It's almost a year ago, January 10th to 15th, we had record low temperatures across the province. And I think we all heard the news. We had an emergency alert around electricity use because we hit a new peak in the province, just over 12,300 megawatts of energy of electricity in an hour. What we probably didn't hear and what we probably don't know is that on the gas side, we delivered a record as well, over 110,000 megawatts of energy, an enormous amount of energy delivered through natural gas. If we strip out all that industrial, we'll just look at ATCO Gas. ATCO Gas has two companies. We have a distribution company and a transmission company. If we just look at the distribution company serving mostly residential and small commercial, most of that is heating load. We hit a new peak as well, and that was 32,000 megawatts of energy. So almost 3 times the amount of energy is delivered for our customers, which is 80% of the province, through natural gas on that peak. So that's important context to keep in mind as we're planning our energy systems of the future. How we're able to deliver that amount of energy, just like any other systems, when it's minus 40 out, our gas systems are challenged. We're not producing more gas to deliver to customers. The reason we can do that is because of the mass storage that we have in Alberta. We have over 151,000 gigawatt hours of gas storage. To put that in context, worldwide electric utility storage, there's 200 gigawatt hours. So we have 151,000. So we're talking magnitude of order difference in those type of delivery system. That's why we're able to deliver that amount of energy to customers at those peak times. We were pulling out of storage over 50 gigawatts of energy each hour to maintain that delivery of energy during that cold snap, and doing that consistently for those 5 days. So it's important context to center ourselves in energy conversations. When you look at the chart on the left-hand side, you see what our total installed capacity. Alberta has made huge inroads in getting rid of coal. We still had coal last January. We have about 30% of installed capacity for wind and solar. Great news story. One of the things we see, though, is when we hit peak conditions, which is what utilities have to design their systems for, we have to deliver energy when it's peak. Nobody would be happy if we were 80% efficient. When you need that energy, we need to be there. And so we have to design to peak. When we hit peak conditions, wind and solar, unfortunately in Alberta, when we hit our peak, it's 5 o'clock on that January cold night. There's no sun shining, and thankfully there's no wind blowing, or else it would be minus 80 with wind chill. And so we're not seeing those as delivering a high amount of electricity at that time. You can see the percentage available. So although they're 30%, they make up 30% of the generation, their capacity is less than 10% of what they're delivering at that time. And so we have to rely on other sources. Like I said, we made great inroads with coal. That's great when you look at that trilemma of energy. That's great for the clean. It reduces CO2 substantially, which I'll show you in a minute. But there is no more reliable energy than coal. For coal generation, you had a pile of coal and you had trucks that delivered that coal, and you could store a year's worth of coal right there, and it was not interruptible. And we don't have that anymore. And so we're more reliant on natural gas than ever to deliver electricity and heating in the peak conditions, which in Alberta is still a winter peaking for both systems. Well, John, I control it, I forgot. I like this graph because it demonstrates how our two different delivery methods, our two main ways you get energy in your home, electricity and natural gas, are very different systems. We talk about peaking on electric, that's the red line. What I took is just daily peak energy delivered, and you can see that between peak and the low on the electric system is only 1.3 difference. It's very steady at the amount of energy that it's delivering all the time. That's not so on the gas system. You can see it's a 16 times difference between the peak that we're delivering at that cold snap and to that minimum that we're delivering in the middle of summer. And so the system has to be able to react to these wide swings in energy demand because of the heating load. That's all heating load in Alberta. It's important context when we talk about electrification of anything. Electrification is going to play a part in decarbonization in some sectors. It's going to be challenging in Alberta for us to meet that heating load with electricity. For this reason, we would have to build out our electric system 3 times the amount and have that sit idle 80% of the time to be able to hit those peaks. So let's move on and talk about, give some perspective on the clean side. So this shows our current picture in Alberta on carbon intensity. When you look at energies, the easiest way to talk about carbon intensity is the grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour of energy delivered. So when you look at a natural gas system, that's about 200 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour of energy delivered. You might be surprised to see that our current electric system, this I pulled on November 7th, but I actually, there's an app called Electricity Maps. You can see all over the world on how their grids are doing. When you click on Alberta's grid today, it's at 460 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. So today, we've made huge inroads in our electric system. We were above 900 when we were so reliant on coal. As we've reduced that coal, we've really brought that down. But we're still above that 300 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour in Alberta. And we're going to be challenged to continue to get that lower because we've got rid of that low-hanging fruit with coal. And so today, as you transition load away from our electricity grid, it would actually have a higher carbon impact on the environment than it would using gas for an equivalent amount of energy. I know we started talking about heat pumps. Heat pumps are interesting because they are more than 100% efficient because they're pulling heat from the air. And so today in Alberta, if you used a heat pump to heat your house, you would have to have supplemental heating below -25. If you use electricity for that supplemental heating, you would have a higher carbon impact. If you use gas for that supplemental heating, you'd be on about par for your carbon intensity or your carbon footprint in Alberta today. And so, we'll see how that goes in the future. Certainly, we're going to make inroads as more solar and more wind is added and other renewables come online. But unless Alberta has 1 minute.
Go ahead, keep on.
Was that my timer right there?
That was a timer.
Yeah, I didn't practice this. I have 2 slides left, I promise. So we are making investments on the gas side to reduce the impact, to reduce the carbon intensity of our delivery method as well. There's 3 different categories there. I'm not going to talk about continuous improvements. I'm not going to talk about end user contributions. Those are equal part of and an important part of the equation. But what we're doing, which is innovative, is we're a world leader in the hydrogen space. And so we have Fort Saskatchewan right now is blending 5% hydrogen into a portion of their community. We have a 100% hydrogen home in the city of Edmonton. We have a 100% hydrogen demonstration center in one of our ops centers. And we have Qualico, who wants to partner with us to build a 100% hydrogen community east of Edmonton. Really, what we're waiting on and have been waiting for about a year is for regulation changes for the government of Alberta to change the Gas Utility Act to allow us to invest in hydrogen. We can't do that today. All of our investment currently has been done with shareholder money. It hasn't been invested in the utility. And so we need that change. We're working with them. We're optimistic there's going to be a change this year, but we're always looking for allies in that. Alberta has, we hear a lot about hydrogen, and there's a reason why we hear about it in Alberta. With cheap natural gas feedstock, with geology that can store carbon, which we're already doing today, we are posed to produce the lowest price blue hydrogen in North America or in the world. And so pretty exciting, and it allows us to continue to use that current infrastructure. And then cost, last slide, besides the summary slide, but I don't count that. We have to recognize that even today, there's a 3 to 5 difference between the cost of electricity and the cost of natural gas. I like to say we don't make it easy for customers because we bill in gigajoules and electricity bills in kilowatts. And so take a look at your bill and figure out where you're getting value is near impossible, unless you're a nerd like me and have a spreadsheet that converts the two together. And I actually looked at my November, just so you know I wasn't fudging the numbers, I looked at my November usage. And franchise fees, which you're well aware of, that makes a difference. But I'm at 3.5 times more expensive for electricity per kilowatt hour than gas for the month of November. So there is a price difference. We need to keep that in mind. So really my main message is as we plan the systems of the future, we do want to make sure they're reliable, affordable, and clean. And there's opportunities everywhere. It's not going to be one silver bullet. If there was, we would have solved it. And as Alberta, BC is a different system as well. BC has hydroelectricity. Makes a big difference in wanting to electrify a lot more things. Alberta, we're not blessed with that, or we haven't invested the same way. And so we need to make sure that we have that energy available when customers need it, and that they can afford it, and feel like solar's going to play a role, wind's going to play a role, maybe nuclear in the future, but natural gas and hydrogen are also going to need to play a role for us to deliver that amount of energy that we deliver to customers. So apologize for going over. Don't know if there's time for questions, but appreciate the opportunity to talk.
There's definitely time for questions. One thing I was going to ask, in our package, after the questions page, there's one more slide. I don't know if you have access to it it's the history of energy use. Yeah, and I was wondering if you could speak to that, because I look at this and I go, wow, that really puts things in perspective. And I was wondering if you could tell me what you see here.
Sure. I couldn't include it in my 10 minutes, so I put it at the end as a bonus slide. Energy transitions have happened, but only locally. So we've transitioned off coal, but if you look worldwide, we are using more biomass fuel than we have ever used before. Wood, dung is being used more than ever. So we have never successfully transitioned off any source of energy. We've only added to it. And that's going to continue to be a challenge as we move forward. So you can see any of those, you look at coal, you look at biomass, you look at oil, they've continued to grow. And so we're going to have our work cut out for us to keep oil, coal, natural gas at status quo and be able to grow renewables. You've seen renewables have grown. They've only been able to serve some of that growth that we see in energy. And we have to remember there's many places in the world that are still living in energy poverty. They haven't had the benefit of utilizing cheap coal to go through an energy revolution and get some of the benefits that we enjoy today. And so they still have to go through that, and the price challenge for them to jump to renewables is going to be very challenging. And so it's just a reminder. I think it's probably the best reminder that there isn't going to be one silver bullet, that we're going to need to invest in a multitude of different areas in order to reach our decarbonization goals.
Right. And this is worldwide.
This is worldwide, yeah.
Right on. Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Graham, you have a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. I've recently been, my gas appliances are end of life, and I'm looking at doing those calculations. I was surprised how hard it was to actually figure out what it would take to cut your gas line and go straight electric. And the best I could come up with is I might economically break even. But yeah, it was.
So just before I came, I was looking at a presentation we did on heat pumps. Because I'm guessing that's one of the technologies you're looking at is heat pumps and then resistant heating to add when the heat pump doesn't go. Pretty challenging today in Alberta to break even when you look at total cost of ownership. Right. So depending on the grants that are available, you may be able to break even on the capital investment, but then you have that operating cost. And even with the efficiency that you're going to get that is above 1 on your heat pump, you lose that in the cost difference between gas and electricity. And so today, your operating costs are going to be highest with a heat pump compared to just a natural gas furnace. Down the road, though, depending on how much we invest in the electric system and how much we want to decarbonize, that could change. But total cost of ownership does show highest the studies that we've done for the electric-only model.
And I think what everybody knows when you start looking at those bills is your gas portion's about $5 and your everything else is a lot more.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, and you know, I like to tell customers about that. It's one of the challenging things we have as utilities is you don't get to shop around. You don't get to see what your neighbors in Saskatchewan and BC and Montana and Idaho and California pay. I proudly tell customers, and I didn't include it in here, that we are one of the lowest cost providers of natural gas in North America. That doesn't help you because you don't have an option. But when you compare to our competitors, we do very well. But I think more importantly than that, we need to do a better job, and I'm advocating for this, to make it easy for customers to see and compare their different fuels. And so instead of billing propane in liters and gasoline in liters and electricity in kilowatt hours and gas in gigajoules, you know, how can we expect a customer to understand if there is value in any of those energy systems? And so, you know, that's why I included that last slide to show that, you know, we're still a quarter of the price of electricity delivered to your home through natural gas. And some of that is because electricity is very challenging to store. It's not found naturally.
Right.
But you know, that's today's state, so I certainly don't, I'm not trying to dissuade you. Honestly, some of the best things, and a lot of people have already taken advantage of this, is what you can do to make your house use less energy overall. And so those investments are always going to pay back because it doesn't matter the energy source that you're using, you're just using less of it. But if you're converting strictly from gas to electricity, today, you're not going to have a carbon benefit, but you're going to have a cost increase.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting exercise just to go through and to see where people are at and what makes them take a look at it purely from a finance point of view. But,
Yeah.
and last question, if I might. If the federal government was to remove the carbon tax, what impact would that have on ATCO Gas or ATCO?
So customers would pay less. You know, that's a good portion of your bill today. I think either way, we're going to have to invest in, if we want to have a clean energy system of the future, we're going to have to invest. And so we're going to have to find a way to fund that. And if it's funded through carbon tax, great. If not, it's going to have to be somewhere else. You know, it's not going to have, we don't pay carbon tax, customers pay carbon tax. And so I think one of the things we see today is that with carbon tax and the predicted rate that carbon tax is going to go, we predict that actually delivering hydrogen will be more cost effective by 2030, the last time we looked at it, if we stay on the trajectory that the federal government has indicated. Obviously, with carbon tax disappearing, hydrogen is a more expensive option than natural gas, still less expensive than electricity, but it may play into the economics of that, and you have to fund that then perhaps a different way, through a different program.
Interesting. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks for the questions.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious about some more, if you could tell me a bit more about the future of hydrogen in relation to public transit. Is that a space where ATCO sees a future? What kind of transit would you be interested in investing in, and where is that industry headed?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm going to caveat my answer by I am not the hydrogen expert at ATCO.
Okay.
I thought about bringing him, but he wasn't available today. We're very bullish on hydrogen. You know, there's a distinction though on what will be funded through utility rates and what will be funded privately through private funds. Really the first challenge that we have to overcome is that availability of clean hydrogen. Alberta is one of the largest hydrogen producers in North America, but it's what we call gray hydrogen. You're not capturing the CO2, and so it's no better for the environment than natural gas is today. And one of the ways that you can create that market for that hydrogen is having a domestic market. And so that's how we see utility blending, is the ability to give that base load to invest in those plants that are going to produce that green hydrogen. Once you have that production, then it's going to unlock those doors for the opportunity to use that hydrogen in other areas like transportation. And And there's a couple, there's some exciting different opportunities with hydrogen in transportation. It can really operate as a fuel cell. So really you have an electric bus, except for you don't have to store that electricity, because that's the challenge that we have in a cold weather climate. Well, besides even just storing it, extra challenging to store in a cold weather climate. You can use hydrogen instead. You can have a hydrogen combustion engine as well, which there are companies that are making long haul trailers. So you won't see ATCO investing in that technology, in the transportation technology, but we are excited and ready as soon as the government gives us the green light to play a role in providing that feedstock so that can be used in communities.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Looking to see if there are any other questions. Seeing none, I would just like to say thank you very much for coming out today. I think what you've showed my colleagues is what I saw and Dr. Cottle saw at lunch, is that you're very knowledgeable but also very balanced in your perspective, and I really appreciate that. It's not all about pushing one thing. I really liked that approach and being able to explain it in a way that the layperson can understand. So
Appreciate it.
really appreciate your time and wish you all the best for the holidays.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and happy if anyone wants to reach out personally and answer your questions or help you do an analysis on your house. I'm happy to find our experts. Not me, our experts.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll now move to our second delegation, which is the CAMBA annual update. Mr. Weldon, you're going to do the introductions.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Krauser, members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce Laura Quelch. Laura is CAMBA's executive director. Laura is here today to provide you with the annual update, which includes all of the great work that CAMBA does for Canmore. And she'll be talking about, all of the work that's happened and what to expect in 2025.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Welch, welcome to Community of the Whole.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, the mic's yours.
Get this one too. I guess that doesn't matter. That's good. Okay, perfect.
And one thing I just add, yeah, the microphone, if you
Can
there
move
you
it
go.
over.
Perfect.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, first, thank you very much for having us join you today and for working with CAMBA over the years. We have been a nonprofit in the Bow Valley since 2016 and partners with Town of Canmore since 2017 with the initial seed funding that we received from the Town of Canmore at that point in time. Some of the land managers that we work with are Three Sisters Mountain Village, Alberta Parks, Extra Mountain Gateway, and have done some work with the MD and are also looking at furthering our partnership with Alberta Parks for trail manager on some new upcoming trails that we'll get into a bit later on. A quick snapshot of the work that we completed over this past year. We had over 3,375 volunteer hours each year. So far, from April to October of this year, we've had 19,000 volunteer hours. One of the things, and our staff our organization has 7 volunteer directors, myself as paid staff, and we have some community engagement staff and our trail crew that you'll see out working on the trails throughout the community within the town, as well as all the provincial lands and private land nearby. One of the areas we spent a fair bit of time on last year for the town of Canmore specifically was the Benchlands Drop Zone. This was an extension of the Benchlands Skills area that's been there now for probably 17 plus years, I think, that it was initially put in. And that facility caters to all ability levels and allows riders to progress their technical mountain biking skills on jumps and drops. And we had a number of volunteer trail nights and the daily usage that we were seeing from the trail counter data that we collect, because that's one of the things we've been able to do is put counter data on a number of the trails throughout the community to track both the difference between mountain biking and recreational hikers or runners or that sort of thing as well. So we saw summer usage of over 15,000 rides in that Benchlands drop zone and invested over 58,000 in 2023 for that area. This summer for the 2024 work, that expanded with the town through the Recreation Department as well, with us signing a service agreement for Benchlands Skills Park, which is all the technical jumps and the lines and stuff that we'll get into a bit later. So you can see the crew here out working and testing some of the features there, and working with Dave Kinn and the great staff the town has on that project, and Bree Campbell. You'll notice here on the left, these are some ramps that we had Bocor fabricate for us here in town locally. The nice thing about these enhancements that we've done to the skills area for Benchlands is that there's much lower maintenance going forward with them, and it just provides a safer, more secure, and consistent platform for people to be working off of, so you're not continually having to go in every week and replace lips or do improvements that way. So we're working with the Recreation Department and looking at ways of putting additional improvements in the park that's there, just to keep that riding experience as enjoyable. Some of the other things that aren't shown on this is there was some gap jumps and stuff there that we filled and made tabletops. So advanced riders are still able to do the things they're wanting to do, but it gives people who are just learning a safe place to try that, and then advanced as they move along. So it just provides a great learning and recreation opportunity for everyone. One of the other areas that we spent time on this year was in Fun Forest Trail. You'll notice on this map, this is Quarry Lake, and you can see where the trail has gone through there. We installed a boardwalk through that area in September with the help of organizations in the community like Ashton Construction. Baker Tilly came out one afternoon with us, ISL, Strides, and some other volunteer days that we had. So organizations like CAMBA rely heavily on volunteers and partnerships with the other community members and the wonderful businesses and people we have in the community to help make these things happen. So very grateful for them. One of the things that when you're looking at the work that a trail association does, I think in the past our work would have stopped probably around October once the snow starts flying, but thanks to organizations like Rotary Club and other groups that we've worked with, we've been able to add snow dog grooming to the work that we do as well. So we do winter grooming throughout the winter to provide fat bike experiences for people as well. So here's some statistics from the past season, and we've just got things set up at the Nordic Center now for this year, and items there with the snow dogs there, and we'll continue to do work on townlands through Fun Forest, as well as in Three Sisters Land in some of the areas that people typically would want to be doing winter recreational activities. So this is a snapshot of the seed funding that we'd received from Town of Canmore, along with the Benchlands service agreement that we had last year, and just to show the value that our organization has been able to provide to the community as a whole. So along with volunteer hours. So the Benchlands project, we've invested close to $75,000 as of this point, and $38,000. Volunteer hours, we have additional contributed value there using the rate through Alberta that they recommend of $24 an hour, with over $124,000 invested in Town of Canmore specific trail projects. So we've definitely stretched those dollars as far as we're able with the initial amount there, and are happy to see the community enjoying that. And then these funding targets are for some other projects that we're looking at for 2015 that we'll get into a bit more after when we talk upcoming trail projects. One of the ones that we're very excited about is the Powerline Connector Trail, and this has been approved with all of our land managers. So That's through Alberta Parks, as well as some easements through ATCO and town as well. And it would be connecting the westmost point of Highline Trail with the new starting point of where Loki's ended, and would provide an adaptive trail for met to Kootenai adaptive standards for intermediate and beginner riders. And it's also removing it from the Tipple corridor, like the wildlife corridor that's there, and bundling it with an existing disturbance to provide an exceptional connectivity piece that's missing in the community, and something that riders of all abilities would really enjoy. Millennium Bike Park is something that we're still working on as well for the 2025 season. And this is a project for the youngest of riders on Strider bikes, and is working in collaboration with the Biosphere as well as Rotary Club and local community members to have it focused on educating kids and people of all ages on how to interact with wildlife, and more of an interpretive feel, and just working with the ecosystems that's there. So just really natural and signage and things to really help start educating people on how to interact and still have fun in this amazing place we have, while keeping the wildlife safe as well. Benchlands Bike Park is another area that we had talked on already here, and this is just looking at unifying and modernizing the existing mountain bike facilities into a central mountain bike hub within town areas. So just continual improvements to the area that's there already, and ensuring that lines are safe, and that we're making that a place that bike enthusiasts can gather and participate in multiple styles of riding throughout the community. One of the other areas that we feel really strongly of, we spend a great deal of our time with our trail crew out in the field, but it's also building community and helping with remembering one of our values, which is it's fun. So just getting people out and really enjoying this wonderful place we get to call home. So here's some of the events that we had last year with working with the Bow Valley Equestrian Group and WildSmart, Biosphere. Park to Pints was another event that we had up with OLS to help with fundraising efforts. Multiple events at the Nordic Center. We also have a winter festival that's coming as well, and just ways of trying to bring people together and continue to advocate and educate people on ways of getting outside and recreating and really enjoying that. And also participated in the community program with when the West Trail, I remember seeing many of you on bikes and out there for the opening of the West Trail. So thank you all for the continued work and support that you give this community, and helping us all stay healthy and active, and allowing us the opportunity to partner with you and continue to do the work that we all enjoy. And do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Welch. Really enjoyed the presentation, and I just want to say that I really appreciate how CAMBA translates passion into really community good and making things continually better. So I really appreciate that. Looking to members of the Committee of the Whole to see if there are any questions. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for being here, Laura, Chad, Kendra. Thanks for being here, directors from CAMBA. On the slide you had for funding targets, which
Yes.
is this one here, could you talk a little bit more about that? Let's say like Benchlands Mountain Park, like 670K, and what's coming down the pipe with that stuff?
Well, we're still working with town administration to really fine tune what that'll look like for that, but it's those targets would be if we're looking at providing pump tracks or other things that are like full mountain bike amenity. I think one of the things there would be more looking at the best location for that to exist within the town, and that's something that administration and we are just in discussions with. So yeah, I think of places like Geordie Park or other places in the area. I think there's ways that you can have potentially asphalt pump tracks or dirt jumps, or just a combination of some of the stuff we've seen us implement at Benchlands already with the ramps that Beaucourt has helped construct, or other places like Cochrane, Bike Cochrane, and Kimberly is a good example, or even Golden, of some of the things that could really make a biking facility really flourish and bring the community together and have areas for picnicking and other things that you can do there. So, and I think with any of the stuff that we're looking at there, it's important to remember looking at also staging areas, parking, washroom facilities, accessibility for any needs like bowheads or other equipment and people with strollers or other things that might be wanting to come and have other children of all ages or themselves out enjoying the facility there. So.
Okay, great. Any timelines about some of that stuff? Is it like,
I think what the highest priority for us for the coming season is 2025 for the Powerline Connector to hopefully have that go ahead. And I think it would be, I think most of it is more on how productive not productive, but how successful we are with our grant applications and fundraising and hitting those capital campaign targets for us to be able to break ground. So we have to be shovel ready to access funds like the Community Facility Enhancement Program or other things like FRIA for the Community Fire Guard. So one of the things that I think from an organizational perspective we're mindful of is how can we help taxpayers and the community dollars go as far as possible. And I think it's being able to look at other grants outside the province or other sources to help improve like how far those dollars are stretching. So it's if we're investing this much, can we have provincial grants that help improve those facilities and really enhance that? So we're just looking at all grant and funding opportunities for that to move ahead. Okay. So.
well, I just want to say thanks for everything that you guys do. This is one of those amenities, and when it exists, it's quite accessible for a lot of people to use at all times of day. And I know my kids have appreciated a lot of the trails, and I really love the work you guys do too. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Councillor Graham.
That's Councillor Ma.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Ma, rookie.
Ms. Quelch, it's great to have you here, and thanks for coming.
Hello, Councillor Graham. Do you have a question for us?
I have a constituent that every time I see him, he thanks me for the Benchlands Bike Park. I'm pretty sure he's missing a tooth because of it, but he absolutely loves that. So thank you for that work. As you know, recreationalists, and certainly not just mountain bikers, in our wildlife corridors is a significant problem that we have in this valley.
Yes.
And I was wondering what CAMBA is doing to help address that and play their part in that task.
Absolutely. So as many of you have learned of already, there is what we refer to as CATS, so Canmore Area Trail Strategy is currently underway. CAMBA, as well as the town administration and a number of other stakeholders and community members and land managers are working with the province of Alberta to come up with an overall trail strategy that like the amount of work that has gone into with the advisory group to go through every single trail, whether it's designated, unsanctioned, what the usages are, meeting with all the focus groups, whether equestrian to skiers to you name it. And they've also had multiple stages of public engagement. So we definitely think that there are good things that will come out of the Canmore Area Trail Strategy from that on helping guide what we can do. We also feel that things like even the Millennium Park project on helping with signage and better education around what even a wildlife corridor is. Like many people aren't even sure of that, right? So I think there's much more we could do from an education and awareness to help people understand. One of the other things that I think is important for us to think of as a community is ensuring that we're providing the experience that those riders are looking for from unsanctioned trails as well. So if, I think when we look at the area holistically, we need to make sure we have stuff for the youngest of riders as well as the advanced riders, and we do have the terrain to do that. So we're at meetings with that group as well as all of our land managers and stakeholders, and membership is there, and that's something that we'll continue to advocate for. But I think land managers will also need to make sure that there's enforcement for that as well, and like similar to what we have with off-leash dogs or anything else, right? It's if there is a legal building that people are seeing or things like that, we need to make sure that that's being reported to the land manager and addressed properly. But we really want to see, really want to ensure that we're doing the best we can to make sure that we have we have the world-class terrain here. We can have world-class amenities for people to use and have something that hopefully will deter, if not curb, some of the activities that we continue to see. So, and one thing that does happen as well is even having trail counter data or different things there, like the province and organizations like ourselves do monitor that and do report that back to the land managers and parties that can hopefully help do that. But I think as citizens, we all need to be mindful of that, and with organizations like ourselves that are really trying to do things proper way and make sure you have your project plans and concepts and go through the channels that are laid out, that people bring ideas forward if they do have them, and how can we put those things that they want to see there forward, because I think working through the associations and the land managers is the only way that we're going to see that everyone can have fun and stay safe at the same time, and you want things built to a certain standard. And go from there. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it answered it very well. Thank you, Ms. Quelch. I really appreciate the partnership and all the work that you guys are doing, and look forward to seeing how the CATS document does come together and what we see come of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I don't see any other questions, so once again, thank you for your time, and thank you to the volunteer directors who came as well. Just to add what I said before, in my experience, when CAMBA's been at the table, you always want to work to be part of the solution, and that's evident when you talk about the CAMBA area trail strategy, and also trying to move trails out of corridors and make a connector elsewhere. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your meeting, and
Thank you.
happy holidays.
Yeah, and happy holidays to you. Looking to item C1, which is the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move approval of the minutes of the November 19th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll move on to item D1. Ms. Rogers, the Council Remuneration Policy. Whenever you're ready, the microphone is yours.
Thank you.
You're going to talk to us about history of energy. No. It was.
Wind is still new in the world, so.
No.
And they're all add on top of each other.
Oh, there you go.
Nothing gets replaced. Okay, here we go. Oh dear. Okay, that I want to do. Can I see that? Oh dear. It's gone. How many more days do you have? 8.5. And I'm counting. Did you get the average on that? Yeah. See it disappear. Oh.
Just follow, do what he says.
Sorry. You think I'd know after multiple presentations?
That should have worked.
Makes me feel better. Yeah.
It is plugged in. Okay.
You can do the other one if you just help me, because I can never see it so small. sorry. Something
There
happened.
we go, that's better. There we go.
There we go. Okay. All right. So today, presenting for you the changes to the council remuneration policy that were recommended by the Council Remuneration Committee. So just to take you back a bit, you'll recall in October of 2023, Council appointed the Council Remuneration Committee made up of public members. In June of 2024, the committee's recommendations were accepted by Council. And then in October of 2024, the Council paid medical leaves policy and maternity and parental leaves bylaw were approved by Council. And then we are here today to just review that Council remuneration policy. There were a couple of items that had come up during the initial discussion in June that sounded like they needed a little bit more discussion from you. And so we're hoping to get that input today and then return in January with an updated policy for Council's approval. For continuity, I have included in the presentation, as is in the report, all of the recommendations that were made. Many of them you likely will have little or no comments on, and we will have time, I think, to discuss the items that have some question or some different opinions. So the Council Remuneration Committee made recommendations in a number of different areas. The first was around councillor base pay. And the recommendation was that activities that all councillors are required to attend shift from per diems for those events to being included in the basic rate, and then that the basic rate be increased. That includes things like council orientation sessions, you see the list there, planning sessions, finance committee, and so on. The basic council rate at the higher rate would continue to include what it included before, which was up to 4 council meetings per month. That includes regularly scheduled council meetings, committee of the whole meetings, special meetings of council, sometimes that's a public hearing, to a maximum of 16 hours a month, and then anything above that would be eligible for per diem. There are a number of items here: informal meetings with other municipal councils, preparation for council and committee meetings, and then the work that you do with residents and constituents is also still included in that basic rate. So a couple of questions or items for your consideration. One was the possibility that since we've included more items in the base pay, is it something that council wishes to consider having a mechanism for outlining consequences if members of council fail to attend those items that are considered required? The Municipal Government Act does have similar types of requirements. It's quite a high threshold, but Section 174.1D has a disqualification of a councillor if the councillor is absent from all regular council meetings held during any period of 8 consecutive weeks. So they've established that that kind of 8 consecutive week period, if you miss the meetings that occur within that period, you would be disqualified. Council could choose to do something similar for items that are included in that basic rate of pay. You also don't have to do anything if you're satisfied with how it is. We could discuss that now if you like, or we could do that at the end. Sorry, I should have set that up better. When Adam Driedzik did the Code of Conduct review, I think it worked quite well to have the discussion as you went along. Sorry, I didn't preface that in my opening.
Okay, and before I pass on to Councillor Faubert, when it comes to, if we're looking at any changes to the proposed policy, I will be looking for councillors to make motions so that we actually can vote on them and make sure that it's actually true direction that's being provided rather than just somebody has an idea and then it being misunderstood if it didn't actually have support. right? This might be a little bit of a different thing. Let's just sort of see where people are landing before we consider a motion. Councillor Faubert.
I believe the code of conduct does talk about being prepared, though, right? So I think that I don't think that I think we need additional mechanisms for failing to attend meetings that are considered part of the core duties. I think the MGA and the code got us covered for that.
The only thing I would add here, you could say if you miss X number of meetings in a row, there's a financial penalty. That would be the only thing I would include here. Less so about the preparation or the disqualification. Again, not something you need to do because those other things potentially cover that sufficiently.
And that was, my follow-up question was going to be that, how would we put it in a remuneration bylaw? And it's, if you miss X, you would lose funds, and so you answered my question. I'll have to think about that one. Thank you.
Councillor Graham?
I'm sorry. Would it be okay if we took a 10-minute break?
Sure.
My apologies.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, come back at 2:05. on the screen. Put short, the first one is the whether we need a mechanism for members who regularly, to deal with the consequences of members who regularly fail to attend meetings that are considered part of their core duties. Does anybody wish to speak to that? Councillor Graham.
You have a question? If we were to consider something, is there a structure that was discussed? Like, would it be a?
Would have to be created. It could potentially be fairly administratively onerous. Someone would have to keep track, almost like attendance.
Yeah.
And, from my perception and anecdotally, I don't think this has been a problem in the time that I've worked with councils. So it is also possible to say, let's advance the policy and see if it becomes an issue. And then at any time, you could request an update to the policy and add something in if you think it would be necessary.
Yeah. So mostly this would be to, attending those things that maybe a lot of us are already at. And so when I first heard the change, having been in the councillor role, and then, recognizing that everybody has different roles, I was wondering, what's the change going to mean as far as motivation to attend? As I think about it further, I'm more inclined to address it if it becomes a problem, and then deal with that particular circumstance, because it could be for a variety of reasons, right? And so that's where my head is at right now.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. This hasn't been a challenge for this council, and I don't believe many before it, but I can think of one instance where it was a bit of a challenge for somebody, but yeah, I think on an as-need basis would where I'd fall on this one.
Councillor Ma?
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning where Ms. Rogers is going. I think by and large, people on council have that sort of sense of self-responsibility and integrity, and also that I think there's the expectation amongst the group itself to sort of keep people like relatively in check. If we're coming down to a situation where it was like a problem, then yeah, let's come up with something. But if we did come down to that place, we just gotta make sure it's set up in such a way where it can be weaponized against a councillor, for instance.
And we probably have already within our code of conduct stepping off points where we could have that conversation. Yeah. Okay, is anybody wishing to argue for including a mechanism? Seeing none.
Okay.
Did you want to speak to the deputy mayor one at all? Or-
I could just give context. So in the discussions with the Remuneration Committee, the thinking had been that all members of council take a turn being deputy mayor, and so over a period of the term, you might all have similar amounts of work with that deputy mayor responsibility. That is, of course, dependent on how the deputy mayor annually is allocated. There are, as you know, certainly times that are busier and times that are less busy. So certainly you could direct that we take that out of base pay and include it again in per diem. Really, I think you have the best sense of what that unfolds like or plays out like.
I can certainly advise, because I'm the one asking people, it does vary significantly from time period to time period, and sometimes something will arise. So it is not everybody's going to spend the same amount of energy. There have been some times when the deputy mayor was called on quite a bit in a month or two because of all that was going on, and there's other times when the deputy mayor has not been called on at all. So I'd be more inclined to make it still per diemable. Councillor Ma?
I would totally agree with you there, Your Worship. Everyone's life changes a lot, and I know, like, in your role, there can be a lot going on, and this is very random at times. And so you get into those situations where I've had terms of deputy mayor have been really quite soft, and there's been other times where it can be really quite full and heavy. And I think keeping it in the per diem setup is just a little more equitable. So, thank you.
Councillor Hillstad?
I agree with that. It's just because of the fluctuations, I think it should stay in the per diems. And sometimes the deputy mayor is not even available to do the event, and then someone else from council has to show up. So I think the simple ways just to keep it per diemable, because it is such a fluid thing, so that's what I would say.
Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this last time I deputy mayored, it was the most amount I'd ever done outside of doing the agenda review piece. So I think that definitely you should, it should be per diemable. And we also have to remember that, like, it's not necessarily just the role being taken if the mayor is unavailable to go to that event or that ribbon cutting. The mayor could become unwell and have to take a leave of absence himself, and the deputy mayor role would maybe rotate if it was for a short period of time or a long period, who knows? And so then there would be a huge leap in one's workload if they were taking on the mayoral role as deputy mayor, if the mayor had to step away for a period of time.
Yeah, and even with the agenda setting meetings, those are fairly consistent for most time periods, but if you're in the summer one, you don't have any. And so that's a little bit of a boon to you, because you're being paid, essentially being paid for something that you don't have to do that year, right? So I would, what I've heard then is I'm going to make a motion that section 14G in the proposed policy be moved from basic rate to per diems. So that was section 14G of the proposed policy be moved from the basic rate to per diems. And just looking to make sure Mr. Stiver has that. Yeah. Oh, we don't need to necessarily have it up. I think everybody understands. Okay, because then it's good. Oh. We're cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, because I know it means converting to the other system. Oh, so while that is, we're just going back then, Councillor Mall, you had a question respecting the motion?
Not necessarily the motion. I was just gonna this is something different.
Okay, then we'll go to that afterwards. Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Would anybody like to speak to the motion or speak further, because some have? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so now we've dealt with those two items. No mechanism required, and we made the change there. Please continue.
Okay, the second recommendation was made to increase counselor base pay, and it was recommended by the committee to increase that base pay to $53,000. That recognizes that the counselor role requires more time commitment than a typical part-time position, and that number was arrived at in looking at a survey of other municipalities and trying as best as possible to compare apples to oranges. We looked also at, with the committee, other types of positions within the community, and the $53,000 was what they had settled on as being fair and reasonable increase for that, covering that base amount. Of course, per diems would be on top of that base amount. Recommendation 3 was that a cost of living adjustment be applied to that base pay on an annual basis. That recognizes the increasing cost of living in the community and also aligns with the town of Canmore employee salary adjustments or pay policy. Okay.
Oh, Councillor McCallum?
So going back to recommendation 3, which I don't have a problem with at all, but my curiosity is if within the budget year prior, if the council decided to not award COLA, would that mean that they would be not awarding it to themselves as well?
I would make that assumption, yes. That's
Yeah.
how the employee pay policy is
Yeah,
written,
yeah.
and so I would align the two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Second category of recommendations were around per diems. Recommendation 1 was that events and meetings that not all members of council are required to attend move from the basic rate, where they were previously, to the per diemable rate, or to the per diem category. The suggestion was that that includes, and we used the wording that was in the policy before, but meetings and social functions held within the municipal boundary when attending as dignitaries representing council. And some examples were Remembrance Day ceremonies, Canada Day events, BODA meetings, potentially service club meetings, that kind of thing. And the nuance, or the, I think, point of importance is in bold, the attending as dignitaries as opposed to just attending. And so I would just move to the kind of per diems would continue to include, and then come to the discussion point, because I think they're all connected. But per diems would continue to include the items that you see listed here. So boards and committees, meetings of commissions to which councillors are appointed, but for which no other per diems are paid, and then the rest of the list there. So I think there's a couple questions.
I think that the key was that it's as a dignitary, and for me, that was a confusing part, because I would consider going to those things to be just a regular part of the role as counselor, but if I was there on an official capacity, I also think that it may already be a practice, because we can't, I think that we are able, the mayor does, if the mayor asks one of us to attend on behalf, it is per diem, we do per diem it. So this kind of codifies something we're already doing. So I approve.
Thank you. And along that attend as dignitaries, a note further in the report that it says providing formal remarks on behalf of the town. And I wonder if you could speak to that piece and why they felt that was a requirement to be a dignitary.
This came from the discussion that's occurred since Council Remuneration Committee. And I think it's to clarify exactly as Councillor Faubert had said there, that some distinguishing factor of when you're attending as a member of the community versus you actually have an official or a formal role. Dr. Cottle and Ms. Hyde did a little AI work, ChatGPT, I think, and just kind of coming up with some definitions. What's the difference of being a dignitary or attending an event in an official capacity versus attending as a regular guest? And we really just shared that to try to help clarify. Some might argue that being a member of council, anytime you're in public, you're a dignitary. And I think that what we were trying to get at here was really clarifying, to Councillor Faubert's point, when you have actually a formal or official function, that's different than just attending an event. If you are opening the Canmore Folk Fest, saying opening remarks, that's really different than you go to Canmore Folk Fest because you like Canmore Folk Fest. You're still a member of council, but you don't actually have an official capacity or responsibility. And I don't know if this actually achieves it, but we were just trying to get some clarity there. So for all of you, it's clear what the difference is.
I appreciate trying to find a difference. I can think of a few events that I've been at that I certainly was a dignitary, probably per diemed, and did not speak at. So.
Yeah, I
There-
mean,
Right.
There might be
Not
other
every event
reasons,
has a
other
speaking
reasons
role.
that you
Yeah.
were per diem, you made the per diem, though. It may have been because it fell into one of the other categories.
It may have been. I have to go back and really think
Okay.
about which events those were.
And you should also check if, in fact, you were paid. I might have taken it out.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, I don't think I was denied the per diem. But I certainly know that I didn't speak officially at that event. I was certainly at it. I certainly was a dignitary in my mind, but I did not give official remarks. So I'm not sure that the giving the official remarks piece is a piece that, for me, clarifies that you are a dignitary.
So that would be one example, I would
Yeah,
think,
so
sorry.
that's not included in the red line. I like the wording in the red line, which is that, where is it here? Meetings and social functions held within the municipal boundary when attending as dignitaries representing council, and the definition for attending as dignitaries means participating in an event or function in an official role with a specific responsibility as requested and on behalf of the town. So it could be that you're not speaking, it could be you're laying that wreath.
Right.
Right? Or that you are
Cutting
there to greet people as they arrive, and you've been specifically asked to do that, you know? So those sorts of things. So I actually like the way that it's worded there, and it separates out, because unlike the recommendation, I didn't think that people should be paid to
Just be at a board.
attend Remembrance Day, or
About a luncheon, like
yeah.
I don't think we should
Yeah,
be.
no,
per
exactly,
those.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, cover the costs. Dr. Cottle, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess I think I'll just to clarify, what would be helpful is some suggestions then to add to the definition, to try to make it clear. I mean, we did go round and round at agenda review in particular on this. And I do think Mayor Krauser did just speak to it. There are a lot of things that members of council might be invited to because people in the community think it's meaningful to have council members there.
Right.
And we're trying to draw the line between councilors being invited to a whole lot of things where the fact that they're a councilor is the only thing, and some kind of specific duty. And I do think that distinction is important, because otherwise the per diems could get really significant just for existing. And so there's a distinction being made about an official capacity that what we're really trying to do is get at a better definition if the one we don't have in the report isn't cutting it. We need some help with defining what would.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll give it some more thought.
Councillor Ma?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm just thinking, like, say, for example, Canada Day, like various councillors have different roles that they eagerly try to help out, and they're driving vehicles, they're doing, so like, where does that sit in your guys' minds?
Where does it sit in your mind? I would throw the question back.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's, yeah.
I guess it depends on the level of responsibility, what's going on. It's kind of a gray area for me, like, yeah.
Yeah. That one to me seems like you have an official role.
Yeah,
Either
like-
as a
That's
group.
being in the parade.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, I'm not
If you're
sitting
at
outside
Ca-
throwing candy.
If you're at Canada Day
Yeah.
sitting on the sidelines.
For
one
sure
thing.
not.
But if
That's
you're actually
different.
being in the parade, that one actually, I
Yeah.
believe, is
Yeah.
That would fit this
redeemable
definition.
and should remain redeemable.
Could I ask one more question, Your Worship?
Yep.
Yeah, and so back to the basic rates, it's up to 4 council meetings per month. And I'm just trying to understand that part, because like when I look at the list above that, there's like council orientation sessions that they're like, are those all part of those meetings? Or if we went to enough of these meetings that was beyond the 16 hours?
No, those are all distinct and unique events.
Okay.
The 16 hours is intended to cover essentially the Tuesdays generally that you're holding your
Okay.
calendars for meetings like this.
Yeah.
Council meetings, last week, you'll recall, we started with a special meeting to approve some budget items.
Mm-hmm.
That's a special kind of meeting thing, yeah,
It's actually the status quo.
yeah.
Okay, I just understand like
It's
how
the
that, how that's
Same
written.
as it now.
Okay,
that it is
thank you.
now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so I guess the question for me there is, do we need a different definition, or, as you outlined, Mayor Krauser, between the definition and the way that it's described in the red line, is that clear for?
Yeah, so I voiced but one opinion, that I like the way the definition and way it's laid out now. Councillor Faubert, what say you?
I'm in support of the way it is now, and also that there is a section that details that the mayor or deputy mayor reviews and approves per diems to ensure they're in line with the policy. So if there ever was a question about a specific situation or circumstance and whether a person was there in official capacity, there is an ability to make that determination by reviewing the policy and through the mayor or deputy mayor. So I think that we're covered.
Yeah, and that's what happens every second Monday. As I approve them right now, I look, and if there's ever a question, I go straight to the policy. And then if there's a conversation to be had, I'll contact the counselor. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to seek a change to what is in the red line? I am seeing none.
The other option for your consideration would be, and I think we've recommended in the red line, removing these examples of specific events with this definition of official function. But you could also add to a maximum of a half day. So you could put a cap on something and say per diem to a maximum of a half day. Or if the way that the current system is set up works for you with up to 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours, and over 8 hours, you can leave it as it is.
So the way the red line really reads right now, it does remove the specific examples. So if you're happy with that, then we can go with that. But if anybody would like to be including the specific examples, then we could have a motion to do that. Not seeing any
Okay,
changes?
thank you.
Okay.
And then the final consideration for you would be if it's more clear if you expand the list of specific eligible events or meetings, given your discussion on the first two, that maybe isn't something that you want to or need to consider, but it is an option for you. So if there's something that's been missing, if you've noticed in your time on council, or an area that comes up repeatedly as being unclear or confusing, or that different people interpret differently, this would be an opportunity to specify it in a different way to be more clear.
To fine tune. Councillor Hillstad.
This is more, depending on the answer to this question, may change how I view this, but for 16C, so boards and committee meetings and meetings of commissions to which councillors are appointed and for which no other per diem is paid, does that, I think we kind of have a practice now that if you have like a subcommittee of a committee, because you're still doing committee work, but it's just, may not be the normal committee day and it's a subcommittee. Generally, I feel like, I think we get paid now. So it's just, does that, how it is written now, does that encompass it, or is that kind of up for, at the discretion of the mayor or deputy mayor at the time? Or do we need to change the wording to include when subcommittees are made? Because some of them, I know I've been on a few in the past where it's like a policy review for a committee and it's fairly intensive work. And you're meeting with multiple committee members and sometimes up to like half the board, and you're hashing out policy and things to bring to the future meeting. So just, I'm wondering if what we have now works, because I think that's been working. It's just more, should we tighten up the language, or is what their work?
I would interpret it as that type of work. I think here originally we were trying to clarify, there were a couple of commissions, maybe just one, that provides compensation. And to be clear, if you're being paid by the commission, you wouldn't then do a per diem. But we could certainly add wording if that's an area that's unclear for people. To me, it seems like it's clear that it's your board work or your committee work. And whether it's a subcommittee or committee, you're still doing that work, and it, I think, would be eligible for the per diem. I think that's how it's been processed.
I'm fine to leave it as is. I just more, because we're opening this up now, I just figured to throw it out there and see if anyone else felt we needed to. I think it has been working that way and would hopefully continue for the future councils. It's just,
Yeah, I'm actually leaning towards adding that clarity, because I believe that I've allowed the interpretation of subcommittees, where a very strict interpretation could be those board and committee meetings to which you've been appointed, which is that set amount, it's going to be one per month. But it doesn't take into account those things that are unforeseen. If there's a change in leadership of that committee and you're part of the hiring committee. Or personnel committee, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of work there. I also want to balance that, and I don't know how you balance it, but I would be okay with an insertion of board and committee meetings and meetings of commission, comma, including subcommittees of, or it could just be including subcommittees, comma, to which councillors are appointed and for which no other per diem is paid. Something like that. What do people think? Does that provide greater clarity? Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Councillor McCallum? Does that work for you? Okay. Okay, so I'll make that motion to insert comma, including subcommittees, comma, end quotation, into 16C after commissions. Okay? Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Hey.
Thank you.
Great, we're getting there. Second recommendation under councillor per diems, as made by the Remuneration Committee, was that the current per diem rate remain the same and be reviewed by the next iteration of the Council Remuneration Committee, which, according to the bylaw, would happen before the 2029 election. The rationale from the committee was that with many duties moving from per diem to base pay, the current per diem rate seemed appropriate. And in the comparison with other municipalities, there was no other municipality that had a higher per diem rate than Canmore. There were a couple of others that were where we were, or where we are, but it did not seem like we were out of sync. So the recommendation was to leave it the same for this go-round, and then have the committee review it next time and see what's changed in the landscape, either locally or with others.
Okay, Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you remind me when the last time that per diem rate was increased?
It has been some time, but it hasn't changed really anywhere else, yeah. So we continued, I think we started at the upper end and we've continued to stay kind of at that higher end. It is a bit of an apples-orange comparison. Sometimes it's hard to compare directly, but there are many others that are similar to ours with the time structure that we have. And this is kind of considered, rather than an hourly rate, it's more of a piecework. So whether your meeting of up to 4 hours is an hour or up to 3.5 hours, it's the same rate of pay. And so you're getting paid for a chunk of time or for a piece of work rather than specifically the number of hours that you've worked. And so there again, it was deemed that it was fair.
When I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to sort of sift through sort of the hours that were aligned with the per diem amount. Was it found that it was typical that the piecework was at the lower end of the hours? Like you were doing 1 hour of work for a half-day per diem? Or was it more that they were maxed out to 4 or somewhere in between? Or I don't know if we did that work or not. I'm just asking if that was a trend that was seen.
No, we could. We certainly analyzed for a 4-year period every meeting attended by every person, but didn't average it in that way. We certainly could.
Yeah, I don't know. I understand that we're at the high end of our comparables, but we're also the most expensive community in the entire province. And so I would be interested to see what, if we were to have applied COLA at minimum to that amount over the last time it was increased, what that number would look like. I think, that's, I would just be curious if that's something that we could see. I don't know if it would make it astronomical or not, but.
Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it's, so you don't really know when those rates came in, like 10 years ago, or?
I'm wanting to think that I was involved, I was on council in maybe 2012.
So 12
That
years
it was
ago.
last
Yeah.
updated, somewhere in that 2012,
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah.
It was when we walked away from the whole, because we used to be capped at 8
Yes.
Yep.
per diems
Yeah.
a year, and then
Yeah, like, I wouldn't mind putting a little more conversation or discussion in on this. I feel all the way out to 2029, that would have that same rate from 2012 to 2029. That's a long time, and in the meantime, life has gotten significantly more expensive. I hear the piecework piece, but sometimes, like, when we run our own businesses, there's times where we have to, like, backfill someone into a position or whatnot, and it can be financially tough to do that sometimes if the rate is going to stay at that. So those are just my current thoughts. Be curious to hear what my other fellow councillors feel.
Councillor Faubert.
I think because this is the first time we've done a remuneration review committee process, that we've actually done a lot of heavy lifting. We've addressed a lot of issues that had already been identified. I think this one is one that needs more work, but we're on a 4-year cycle with this, and I think that, for me, I'm comfortable with that because I know that this question will be addressed in a future process. It might, and I know it might seem like a long time, but the key is that we've actually gone and looked at and redistributed things into the base pay so that not having a cost of living increase on the COLA amount will be less significant as a result, because now more is recognized in the base pay, and the base pay gets the COLA. So I don't think this is something for addressing this time around, per se, because we have another committee coming up in the next term, so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mara.
I was just going to continue on with what Councillor Ma said is, we don't have to wait till 2029 to do it, do we? We can do it anytime before 2029. So if anyone figured they needed to bring it forward in 2025, 26, it could be brought forward, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The only 2029 is this cycle for the next council remuneration committee, but at any
Yeah, but-
time, council can ask for and make recommendations to changes to a policy. That's
Thank you.
correct. Yeah.
Oh, right, you're right, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew there was something in there
Yeah.
that was,
And I think that that's the situation we're in right now, though. If to discuss the rates and try to find a rate now, it isn't coming from a review committee.
right.
And so if we did it right now, it would be the same situation. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, so just doing some quick calculations on the per hour. So the per diems are roughly 30 bucks an hour, you know, depending on which one you calculate. Whereas council salary at 59,000 a year is about 56 bucks an
53.
hour.
53, not 59.
50, I didn't do the 52, I did it on 59, which I probably should have done on 53.
What hours would you be using for that
So
calculation?
I went with half-time, 20 hours a week.
Okay, so I think that's,
But we're also being recommended that it's 30 hours a week.
yeah,
So-
it's tough to say.
Kind of a personal comment on this one is, whenever I have to have staff cover me for meetings, it quite frankly costs me money to do that. I pay my staff more than I get paid here generally. So just a side note.
So, we've had a discussion about these per diem rates. Is anybody wanting to make a motion that they get changed, or make a motion to get certain information so it can be considered when it comes to council? Or we could just let it stay as it is. Councillor McCallum.
I would like to make a motion that the per diem rate, when it was last updated, and COLA over time, what that would look like to this date. Pardon me? To just receive that back? Yeah, I just would like to, that's what I need to know to be able to make a decision, right? And maybe I'm out of whack, but
So as I'm understanding it, when was the rates last changed, and how much have COLA increases been since that?
Yeah, what would it be in
Yeah, the
$24?
cumulative COLA
Yeah.
change, yeah, where would it be in
With COLA.
$24?
Assuming that not every year, though, was COLA applied. So
Yep.
in line with the staff, how
Yep.
COLA was
Yeah.
applied.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there weren't many years, but there were one or two at least.
Councillor Ma?
Yeah, I think the logic where Councilor McCallum's coming from makes sense to me. Just intuitively to myself, if I was to like talk to someone that was considering running, and they saw that the per diem rate had stayed the same from 2012 all the way beyond. Obviously, it depends on the next council if they want to take on the political cannonball of trying to give themselves a raise. But waiting until 2029, my gut feeling is that what information comes back from this exercise, looking at COLA, won't be significantly different, but it'll be different enough. And I think that sends a message that this per diem rate is scaling in some sort of way and is a little more fluid with the passing of time.
I have late-breaking information from a friend I didn't phone, but who's watching. No. So rates were changed in 2021, not 2012. So, and prior to 2021, they were $100, $200, and $300. So they went up
Oh,
25% on the low end and 15-ish
Really?
on the high end. Yeah, sorry, yes.
Okay, so then can I make a motion that based on, so 2012 was the year, is that what was 100, 200, 300?
No, 2021,
is when they
Not
changed to
2012.
these rates.
yes.
Let's go back to 2012,
Oh,
assuming that was the year, with the 100, 200, 300, and find out what COLA moving forward would have been now.
sure. I'm just trying to think how to do this. But we applied, between a 15 and a 25% increase in a 4-year. Anyway, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
I would say that even then we were still underpaid. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
I'm not sure that we can prove that. I don't, yeah.
I don't think we can prove it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr.
Anyway, I'll
Cottle?
see what we can do. I don't know.
I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of confusion around 2012 versus 2021. And now I've lost track. Is there a motion on the floor?
There was a motion to provide when they were last changed and the
Okay.
COLA increases since then. With the new information, Councillor McCallum was inserting a friendly amendment to saying if you could find out what the date was before the 2021 change and calculate the COLA increases since then.
Yeah, so, and that's fine, I'm sure we can do that. I guess more I'm thinking just about the process for council to make a decision. So
Yeah.
we can bring whatever information you want back at a future meeting, but then I also thought I heard something about an analysis of a pay rate, which is really what the Remuneration Committee has already done, is that whole analysis, and that's how they got to this recommendation. So, but we can provide the back history. I guess what I would like clarification on is, in addition to providing that, would it work if we bring that back? Like, the plan is to bring this back after this discussion at a business meeting. So we could just insert that information as an attachment to the report. That is sufficient for what you, okay.
Yes.
If we want to make a change
Yep.
to the status quo that has been provided
Certainly.
by the committee, then we can.
Okay, I'm just checking to make sure that's what it is. It's just like a attachment of information. Okay,
So what I see this is just providing information so that combined with the recommendations and also considerations such as making the changes ourselves versus going through a review committee, whether or not council would like to do that. And what I'm hearing is that this is some information that would be helpful in that assessment. Anyone else speaking to the motion? Councillor Ma?
Could I'd like to make a request to add one more piece of information, which would be the 2021 rate applied with the COLA that we've had as well too. So that we can kind of reference the number that Councillor McCallum has plus this one as well too. Thank you.
Okay, so will you accept that as a friendly amendment? Okay, so looking at the last rates, the 2021 rate and the one before it, and applying COLA to each of those to determine what they are. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to that motion? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that motion is passed. Carried unanimously.
Around full-time equivalent status, the committee did a fair bit of work on comparisons, again, with other municipalities, and so much as that's possible, trying to figure out kind of math on base wage and per diem amounts. Also looked at a number of different positions across various sectors in the community. I mean, it's really difficult to identify a set number of hours. There were surveys done with previous members of council and current members of council, and quite a range existed. And based on all of that data, the committee recommended it really is about, on average, 25 to 30 hours a week. Clearly, there are times of year it's much more than that. There are other times of year that it's less than that. And so they were suggesting, based on all that data, on average, throughout the year, it's about 25 to 30 hours. But it's very difficult to say these are the only hours kind of that you're working. If you go to the grocery store and someone stops you and asks you a question about something, you're working. So, yeah. So no real changes made there, but more for your comfort to know that that discussion was had and in depth and analyzed in so much as is possible. And would result in an update to our candidate package. So we're informing, I think we are at a slightly lower amount in the current candidate information package. So just wanting to adjust that for anyone considering running in the next term. We moved then on to mayor's compensation. There was a recommendation to increase the mayor's annual salary to $130,000 a year, and that really was reflective of the responsibility of that position and the time required to complete the job. And to your point, Councillor McCallum, considered as well the affordability factors within Canmore, which were also factored into the increase in base pay for members of council. And then similar again to base pay for councillors, that the cost of living adjustment as approved in the budget process would be applied to the mayor's salary. So again, if there were no cost of living increase approved, no adjustment would be made here, but it would be consistent for all members of council and staff. In terms of benefits, couple of changes there. The first was that no change. Actually, basic health, dental, and retirement benefits remain unchanged. The big difference, though, was recommendation 2, which was when calculating group retirement savings plan contributions, that both base pay and per diems be included in that calculation. Previously, it had been base pay only, not per diem.
About this, I have to say that, you know, in my 14 years that I've been here, this is the only thing that's really bugs me about my remuneration. It really quite annoys me. What was do we have any idea as to what the thinking was in omitting per diems from being part of the retirement package, or not package, it's not much of a package, but the group retirement savings plan? Because, yeah, this is like, yeah.
Yeah, so the thinking had been, there were significant tax changes made at the federal level a few years ago, and some of you may remember who've been in.
A third of our compensation was tax-free. Yeah.
And so then that changed, the federal government took that away, and then I think that was originally the thinking behind part of that.
Because we got a third of our.
Yeah.
Our
I
pay
can't
was
speak to whether the math
tax-free,
adds up or who made the
then
decision, but that was
they
the
shouldn't
thinking.
get matching RRSP? Okay. I'd like to beat whoever brought that up originally, because I
Wasn't me.
think it's no, it was not. This is long before you showed up on the
Yes,
scene.
it was. Anyway, I can't speak to
No,
the
no,
the
I just-
rationale other than that tax
Yeah, I was just
piece.
wondering if there was
Yeah.
any history on it, because I
Yeah.
think it has been the most punitive thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, and per diems, as you had pointed out, also had a cap previously, and so was a much lower, anyway. It's an example of lots of different changes having a big impact, so, yeah. I think this is a good recommendation. And then the final, oh no, almost final, that council, all of council remain with the Alberta Municipal Services Corporation for insurance coverage instead of switching to WCB. The AMSC coverage provides 24/7 coverage, which is more appropriate than the irregular hours worked by members of council. With WCB, it can get tricky on determining were you actually working, were you not working, if we're back to an event and something happened. If you weren't there in an official capacity, you might not be working. Here, you're covered 24/7 regardless of how you show up or for what. And then the final recommendations were around allowances and expenses. In addition to the provision of a laptop or tablet, that members of council be eligible to participate in the town's Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD, program for cell phones, and that would be a $25 per month allotment towards a cell phone.
So would that be optional, and how would that affect councillors' privacy on their own phone? So currently, of course, my laptop and everything I do on it is subject to FOIP. It's subject to any member of the public to ask administration to root through, which is perfectly understandable. If you are using your Bring Your Own Device, what part of your device is now open for the public to FOIP at their will?
From what we understand, you open the door for FOIP, for sure.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
you're conducting official business on that
Right.
device. There are likely nuances depending on the specific situation, but it's definitely a risk, yeah.
Right. Yeah, perfect, thank you.
So just to be clear, this is to be eligible, but
Yes.
it's not automatic.
It's an application process. It's not a requirement. If you wish to have the $25 supplement, then you would apply for that process, and then that would appear on your biweekly or once-a-month pay.
Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Your Worship. And this for all council members, including the mayor? And so the mayor would be $25 a month as well? Okay. And you
I
don't
would
expense
think,
anything?
I would think especially the mayor.
Yeah, no,
But-
I'm
but
thinking
I don't know if I would do it. Yeah, $25
is nothing.
it's not a
Well,
lot.
sorry, it's not nothing.
It's not
No,
intended
no.
to fully cover
Yeah.
the cost
Yeah.
of a data phone plan. It's intended to recognize
Yeah.
a portion of the time may be business, and a portion of the time that you're on your own, you still pay for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think if the mayor was to be included in this, that it would be 100% of his costs, but.
Yeah.
That's an option.
Councillor McCallum?
I seem to remember, did that change at some points? I seem to remember that the phone plan for the mayor was completely covered as part of their role.
I'll have to check, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yeah.
Anyways,
Seems to me.
yeah, it's kind of, makes sense.
All right. On to recommendation
And then the
2.
final recommendation was that the policy be updated to require that receipts be submitted for expense reimbursement. It's a fairly standard approach to expense reimbursement, was just never included in this particular policy.
Okay.
And that's it,
Okay.
unless there are any other things that someone would like to amend.
Councillor Faubert?
I have a thing.
Okay.
Section 23. Vehicle use expenses. Now, I see that the bylaw itself was first passed in 2017. I'm not necessarily sure we had as many electric vehicles as we do now then. And then in my own experience, in terms of my council business outside of town and the need for vehicles, I found that when I travel out of town overnight on council business, it's much more difficult for me to take a town car. And then the policy makes it so that if I use my own vehicle, I can't make a mileage claim at the same level if a town car was available at the same time. There's also been times when I've gone to Edmonton for a 4-day conference, and my car has sat in a parkade while I walk to my conference from my hotel and back. And I've questioned to myself, is anyone, like if I had a town of Canmore car, it's just sitting there in a parkade in Edmonton, and it's not available for any staff to use. Is the policy where it makes a shall, for council shall use town vehicles for travel whenever possible, is there a room potentially for a distinction when you're traveling out of town and overnight from an equity perspective? Because for me, when I travel overnight out of town, I have to take my dogs to my mom's in Cochrane. I have to pick them up on my way back. There's a lot of logistics in my life that I don't want to put in a town of Canmore car, especially considering that the next user of that vehicle might have pet allergies, right? And so I did send the clerk a motion, and it's not a motion to change it, but a motion to ask admin to come back with potential changes, looking at out-of-town overnight travel differently. And I'm prepared to put it on the floor. If now is not the time, and maybe the next remuneration committee is the right time to look at this.
Let's put it on the floor.
On the floor, okay. But just from my experience, I found, I think in the last 3 years, I've only made one mileage claim. And so I find myself paying for my own gas and travel on council business because it's a barrier for me to even book and travel in an EV, especially to Edmonton. I took the EV to Edmonton a couple weeks ago, and it was very challenging for me on my own. And so I just thought that there might, if council was open to it, there might be a potential to change the language to distinguish between two types of travel for council on business, out of town overnight and within the valley. And I don't know if I talked enough for Ben to get that all working. Okay. And then the other thing is, like, for the most part, I ride my bike, I take the bus, or I carpool. I know we sometimes go to Banff or Bighorn for business, and that's really doable, but it's the overnight travel. So the Committee of the Whole, direct administration to make suggested changes to Section 23 of the Council Remuneration Bylaw to allow for the use of personal vehicles for overnight trips without a reduced compensation rate. I don't know if make suggested changes is the right way to put that, or make suggestions to change. Amend, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the word. Thank you. My brain stopped working for a second.
Okay.
And
I always spell
appreciate.
counselor with 2 L's too, but anyway, that's.
Did I?
No, I always do with 2 L's.
It should be 2 L's.
Yeah,
It's a policy too, sorry, not a bylaw.
there you go. Yeah.
That'll make a difference, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think you've spoken well. I'd be prepared to support this motion. I've often thought about sitting in AB Munis with the town vehicle there and others not necessarily being able to use it. Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, I'd be prepared to support this. I find I'm sometimes in a similar situation where if I'm flying, say, to, like, for FCM, and the airporter is quite expensive, or the timing for the airporter is actually more prohibitive, I find, with later flights or delayed flights, especially with the number of delays I've been seeing over the last few years. But I tend to do park and fly. So I'll drive my car, park my car for 3 days or 4 days, whatever it is, and then come back. The park and fly is like $60, $15 a night. It's cheaper than taking the airporter. Like, in terms of the impact to the ratepayer, it's cheaper. But then one side of that is that my family is now without our only family vehicle, and sometimes that's not a big deal. But on the other side, if I were to take a town vehicle, that's one less vehicle that is able to be used those 3 or 4 days here in town. So I feel like it's one of those questions where it's going to be, you're kind of damned if you do, if you damned if you don't, but perhaps administration has some better ideas and can think out of the box outside of what I've had over the years. I don't disagree. I have put a handful of mileage claims in at the 12% over the years. And I don't like to drive to Edmonton in the e-vehicles. It just takes too long. So.
Councillor Ma.
Yeah, I think Councillor Faubert, this is a sensible thing that you brought up. I'd be prepared to support it. I think a lot of it, you're coming from a place that's just trying to help the organization rather than deplete the fleet and have vehicles sitting around. And also your point about, say, if you have like pets and you have to get them from point A to point B, and there are, those fleet vehicles by nature are used by all sorts of folks, and maintaining a standard of comfort for the people that are allergic to pets is sensible. So yeah, I think we can like sharpen this one up a little bit. It's a good idea.
Take your own car when you go far so you don't deplete the fleet. Yeah.
Do you have that?
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Could I ask a question?
All right, there's a motion on the floor.
It's okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
Ms. Rogers.
I guess I just wanted to ask, is council comfortable with something loose like that, that really you can make a decision on what works for you? Because sometimes you might need a fleet vehicle, and sometimes a personal vehicle is more appropriate.
Yep.
I mean, this fits within what the motion
I
that
think
you've made
it's,
here.
I
just
think
wanted
what
to
I'm
get a
hearing
sense.
is when you
Yeah.
go out of town, you can have a choice of
Yes.
either, but you're not
Thank you.
penalized for taking your car.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's the lower rate. Like, I have to make a call.
Yeah.
But I think the mayor wrapped it up for us real well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor McCallum?
Don't do that again.
No.
Don't do that again. Yeah, no, I think I think the previous policy basically assumed that councillors weren't going to do what's best for the organization. But I also think that the reason why, and I've seen in, like, say, the city of Calgary used to push their staff to use their own vehicles as much as possible, because then they were pushing the liability onto them as well. So if there was an accident or whatever, they were without the car, not the city of Calgary. So, whereas I don't think that's the approach that was being taken here at all. I think it was more about being efficient and wanting to push the liability onto the municipality where it, quite frankly, belongs. And doing that financially was the way to do it. So I don't think there was any ill will in the previous policy. It was just trying to actually financially cover staff's backsides. So, thanks.
Okay, we have a motion on the table, and I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Now, before we conclude this topic, now is the time, if there are any other questions or any other motions to propose to change what is currently been provided as the redlined version. I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. And, oh, there is one question.
One question. Sorry, I was looking through. She's like, how many days?
How many days?
8.5.
I think it's 8 and a quarter now.
We're going to do this for a long time. At any point, and I didn't see it in the report, and it was something that I brought up in the survey when I did the survey. At any point, was there any conversation with the committee about an exit allowance? So in larger municipalities, elected officials are provided, and I think it's actually pinned to the number of years of service. I can't remember, with the maximum being 6 months. But when a councillor is either, and I'm not sure if they are unelected or they just choose not to run, at the end of their term, they are provided with an allowance, an outgoing allowance over time, so that they can transition back into the private sector normally, or into a new job. Was that ever anything that was discussed at all around the committee table, do you know?
It was discussed, and we couldn't find any examples other than a couple of really big centers or the province or the federal government where that applied.
Yeah, so the city of Calgary, I know, does it, and
Yeah.
I think Edmonton, but those, of course, are large
Yeah.
cities. I just wasn't sure if. Yeah, and I guess I would say that, when you are focused on, in every case here, your other job and then this job, that trying to then look at what your life after politics is going to look like from an income perspective is a bit tricky. And some people might find themselves unemployable in their communities for whatever reason. And I was just curious if that was something that was discussed. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are now done that. We're going to take a break and come back at 3:15, so just a short break, 6 minutes.